This is the Truth Network.
The heart of every man craves a great adventure, but life doesn't usually feel that way. Jesus speaks of narrow gates and wide roads, but the masculine journey is filled with many twists and turns. So how do we keep from losing heart while trying to find the good way when life feels more like a losing battle than something worth dying for? Grab your gear and come on a quest with your band of brothers who will serve as the guides in what we call the masculine journey. The masculine journey starts here now.
Deep from a lair in North Carolina foothills. Ronnie, that was for you. I tried, man. I got nothing here. This is
a layer of onions?
Yeah, layer. I can't pronounce it.
That's where
Welcome to Masculine Journey After Hours. A little bit more relaxed.
Yeah.
Right? And a little bit more open mic time. And this is where we kind of to dive in a little bit deeper than we're able to do in the half-hour radio show to talk a little bit more freely.
Yeah.
About some things. Not that we plan on going on any tirades anytime soon, but
no, it's just an opportunity for us. There's no commercial break. There's nothing in the way, and this is not broadcast over FCC, so we might use a little different clip than we normally would use or something like that, but it's really, it's born out of a fact that we often leave the studio after we do a show and we keep talking about that which we were doing the show on, and a lot of deep things come out, and we sometimes get much more authentic and personal and intimate about it. And so we just wanted to give our long-term listeners, our podcast followers, a little more than what they were getting, and just allow people to walk with us a little more. It's I think you've said it best over the years that we've been doing these boot camps on the radio and stuff, that we're no different than any of our listeners. We're no different than any of the guys at the boot camp. We just might be one turn ahead of you on the road, and we're just standing there saying, come on, the water's fine. But and this is our chance kind of to allow people to see that in a little more vivid way, maybe.
Yeah, and each week we want to continue to talk about the topic that we were talking about that week.
Yeah.
And this week we've been talking about healing.
Mm-hmm.
So if you picked up the podcast, you probably saw that. It said After Hours Healing.
Yeah.
So, we're welcome. And so we're going to talk a little bit more about that topic. And Darren, I want to go ahead and move to you because we do have a clip.
Yeah.
So we'll go ahead and talk about the clip, maybe set it up. I can set it up, rather. And then we can play the clip and you can talk a little bit more about it. But it's from a movie called Awakenings, I think. Robin Williams, Robert De Niro. And it's a true story based on a doctor that was working with patients that were in like a facility. I believe it was like a mentally ill facility back in those days. But they were catatonic. They were not moving. They would just literally be physically stuck in a position all the time, and it was not responsive, anything like that. And he started studying them, working with them, and realized that they did have some responsiveness. And he set out to try to get to some medication that would help them, and found a medication that brought them out of that stage and awakened them. That's the name of the movie. And so we pick up this clip. You have Robert De Niro's character who had been one of those patients, and now he's been awake for a while and living somewhat, learning about the life that's changed since before, he kind of went in that catatonic state. And now he has to go in front of a review board to talk about a simple request that you would think, but things aren't always as simple as they appear.
No, I mean, he just wants to go take a walk without supervision, right? But they don't trust him. They don't know if they can trust him. There's not enough evidence, and all of those different things. And I had never seen the movie, and you sent out these clips, and I listened to the trailer clip, and then I listened to this clip. And I remember when the movie came out, I thought, that looks kind of boring. I don't think I want to see that. Well, after listening to this clip, I want to see it now. I really do. But as I listened to this clip, it stirred something in me and took me back in time several years to some memories that I had when I was treated very much like this guy is treated in this clip.
What is it that you want now, Mr. Lowe?
The simplest thing.
And it is?
To have the choice to go for a walk if I want to, like any normal person.
You are free to go for a walk.
I am? Alone?
What difference would that make?
Look, I'm not a criminal. I've committed no crime. I'm not a danger to myself or to others. And yet I'm still not allowed to go for a walk on my own by myself. You didn't wake a thing, you woke a person. I am a person.
Mr. Lowe, are you at all aware of the unconscious hostility you're exhibiting toward us right now?
How could I be aware of it if it's unconscious?
Nora, please. I'm curious, what would you do if you went out?
I'd go for a walk. I'd look at things. I'd talk to people. I would decide if I want to go in this direction or that direction or straight ahead. I would do all the things that you people take for granted.
And that's it?
That's it.
All right, then. Well, we'll certainly take this into consideration, and we'll let you know.
Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Sayre.
Are you all right?
Yeah, I was aware of that. It was nothing. I was nervous. What'd they say?
They said there was insufficient data at this time. That continued observation was necessary for a complete diagnosis. They said it's a different world out there, and you may not be prepared for it, and they couldn't be held responsible for what might happen to you. They said no.
So, I talked about that when I listened to that clip, it reminded me of a time in my life where I used to be a really angry guy and was very frustrated. Life was out of control. I couldn't control it, obviously, because it was out of control. And the people around me started seeing me act out in very angry ways, especially my ex-wife. And she was doing some things at that time that would make any man angry. And so I felt justified in my anger. But as I began to get some healing for that, and we began to get some healing for some things that were really ugly in our marriage, namely sexual addiction of mine and her having an affair, and by this time multiple affairs. That was a hard pill to swallow for her, as I began to get healing and began to change, and that anger was dissolving, and God was really doing some pretty miraculous stuff. And nobody would give me credit for it. Very much it was, they would, and I remember how discouraging that felt. That, yeah, they're hearing me, they're listening to me, but they don't believe the healing that I've gotten. They don't trust the healing that I've gotten. There's not enough data, as they said in the clip. And we all live in that in one way or the other. I remember her, saying to me, you don't forgive me for having affairs. And I had. I really, really had. But she didn't feel that. And so she wasn't capable of giving herself the credit. And I'm not slamming her at all. We are very good friends, and to this day get along really well. Her and my present wife are good friends, and we have a great relationship. The fact of the matter is, though, that when you walk in an old identity and somebody starts treating you in a new identity, that can be scary. But the vice versa is as well. When you're walking in a new identity, you're walking in new healing, and people won't give you credit for it. that's enough sometimes to drive you back to that old behavior. Thankfully, it really didn't in this case, but I still find myself fighting that at times.
Well, and we, can I talk about our meeting the other day?
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, the other day, Darren and I went to lunch, and last Friday, I think it was, we had went to lunch, and we're talking about just some of the stuff we shared last week on the air, but realizing, God was making us aware that we need to allow each other to walk in healing.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because I'm one of those, my skepticism, all the tests they give you at work and all that, my skepticism ranks up there at like 90-some percentile. Like, I'm extremely skeptical.
Yeah.
I build houses and I'm not that thorough. My thoroughness is really low, but I'm really skeptical, so I don't trust anybody, so I go check on them. That's why I'm thorough, right? But, God was telling me, in breakthroughs and stuff that you've had and changes I've seen with you, that I needed to let down my guard and quit looking for evidence of something that wasn't there, because you'll find what you're looking for, right? If you want evidence of something, you just look hard enough and the enemy will make it look that way. But, we realized for our relationship anyway, we need to give each other that grace.
Yeah.
At least I'm speaking for me.
No, both. Yeah. Because I'm looking for that judgmental spirit.
Yeah.
You're very high judging, right?
Yeah.
In the ENTJ.
Yeah.
And so I'm looking for that, right? And so I have to give you that grace. I have to not be looking for that. And we've Jim, the very first boot camp we did, I think one of the pieces of advice we gave guys was one that we got when we went to a boot camp, and that is, do not go home and say, I'm healed, I'm great. Honey, I've had breakthrough,
Yeah, because that bites you. I mean, we can feel that way, but our feelings are deceptive. We need to have God tell us that before it's true. It's and you hit one of my favorite subjects. We see what we want to see. We hear what we want to hear. Rarely do we get a clear picture of what somebody else is seeing, because we're looking at it through our personal lens of, our personalities, our past hurts. One of my problems is my name, James, which is from Yaakov, the deceiver, the supplanter. And I grew up a people pleaser, still am. I want people to like me. I want to tell them what they want to hear, whether it's the truth or not. And that is one of my, we talked about slippery slopes and said they may or may not, sometimes it's a precipice, it's not a slope.
Or a cliff, if you don't know what a precipice is.
Yeah, I assumed cliff, but I didn't know for sure. Thank you.
Sometimes
I actually literally did read a dictionary regularly when I was in grammar school. So sorry about that.
We know, Jim.
I'm learning. Thank you. I feel better. Now I know what.
You got another word.
I can't say lair, apparently. But
is that where you live, or is part of it? I don't know. But the bottom line to that was, I got to where I didn't trust myself to tell the truth.
Yeah.
People, and this is all of us. Somebody lies to me, it takes a lot to get to where you trust them again. Somebody hurts me. It takes a lot to get where you trust them again. And that's what you're looking for, is the lie, the wound.
That's funny, because you're the skeptic, so everybody's lying to you.
Well,
that was the truth.
I like to prove that they're being truthful.
Okay.
It's how I choose to look at that.
Yeah. See, I don't know that I would call myself a skeptic, but I just believe that people are probably going to lie to me, even those who love me, even those who care about me deeply, because they, our tendency is to tell people what they want to hear, instead of telling them the truth. There are some people, they might be named Darren, who say the truth too often. Not that I've never told a lie, I freely admit that, but oftentimes I will say way more of the truth than needs to be said, That's been one of the things that you've needed to forgive me of, is because, I will say, Sam, you're ugly and your mother dresses you funny pretty quickly sometimes. And I have to be less brutal than that. And yet I just when I used to manage, a lot of people, and I just kind of figured they were going to lie to me. And so I didn't hold it against them. Because it was like your kid. You don't hold it against your kid because they lied to you, right?
Kids. They're supposed to lie.
Yeah, and they're scared. And so I just treated all of my employees like they were my kids, and I just figured they're going to lie to me. And I would look them in the eye and go, you really don't expect me to believe that. I don't believe that. Oh, it's true. Okay, well, I'm going to call you a liar anyway, but we're going to move on, and just and move on. So,
and I move on without saying that, but
Yeah.
I do feel the same thing. In fact, I was lied to quite a bit this afternoon in a counseling
I'm
session,
sorry,
but
Jim.
I let it go. And we're using the word lying. You can spin. There are other words for it, but I'll give you a quick example. My wife, I used to stay up all night playing games back when I could stay up all night. And, I'd go to bed 4:30 in the morning. And my wife said, what time did you finally get to bed last night? Oh, it was sometime after 12:30. Well, that was true.
Yeah.
But it wasn't 12:45. It was 4:45. And that I will still have to catch myself sliding into that kind of deception.
I think a lot of it has to do, at least for me, is how close you are to me and how deep that hurt.
Mm-hmm.
Right? If it's... I have a lot of grace for people around the perimeter.
Yeah, it's easier. Isn't it?
It is. It's easy
Yeah.
to have grace for, the trade partners at work, contractors, expect that there's going to be some misunderstandings at the best, or some lies at the worst, and I can understand, I get that everybody's broken, right? But the closer it gets and the more intimate it gets, boy, the harder it is.
Mm-hmm.
The harder it is to trust and let go and let your guard down and let that person walk in that healing.
You're not the only one. The expression that I use that my wife doesn't like is, in God I trust, everyone else is suspect.
True.
You and my wife would get along very well because the kids said, Mom, you don't trust us. Said, you're right. Who do I trust? God. I mean, that was a standard 3 times a week.
So we talked on the radio show about healing, and we talked about the different layers.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that it's, at least for me, as I look at a lot of the healing that I've had, if I'm no longer in relationship with that person, I can get to some level of finality with it pretty easy.
Meaning if they've been killed.
Yeah, my parent. But neither one of my parents are alive.
By you or someone else.
Yeah, I have some family, a sister that's no longer alive. Working with God, and obviously it had to come to some level of forgiveness from me,
right,
to all those people, and getting there. I can stay there with them because there's no more opportunity for relationship.
Mm-hmm.
There's no more reason to have a guard up. There's no more looking for evidence. I can let that healing stay.
Right.
It's the other healing that is so much harder to hang on to.
Mm-hmm.
The interpersonal relationship stuff, walking in this group or walking with friends, being able to let some of that go is easy. It gets harder. And then also with personal healing, of things that I've battled, how I feel about myself. Some of the things my sister used to say to me, if I'm not careful, I'll let myself fall back into that trap and make an agreement again, and believe that I have nothing of value to say or start acting in that way. And all those things God's given me freedom of, I've got to be very careful not to step back into it, because, the enemy is always trying to pull you back in.
Yeah. And he's not too original, actually.
No.
He's continually saying, Sam, shut up. Sam, shut up. You motor mouth. You have nothing to say. And you're hearing it, or, you're by the blood of Christ cutting that off and not hearing it a lot of the days. Mm-hmm. He's still saying it all the time. You're not hearing it more than you're hearing it. But being one of your closest friends for so many years, there are times when I hear it for you. Mm-hmm. I hear you saying something along the lines of, well, and I've probably been talking too much, or something like that. And And it's a privilege as a friend to be able to go, no, you haven't. You've been saying exactly what needed to be said, and keep saying it. That healing. Now you talked about, for a period of time, you didn't want to forgive the person that molested you as a child.
Yeah, it felt as though I was letting them off with something.
Yeah.
Right. I was no longer in a relationship with that person.
Right.
I've been out of my life for years, but it was something that felt like I had a right to hang on to.
Mm-hmm.
That if I hung on to it and I didn't give them forgiveness, that I held them captive somehow.
Yeah.
Right. And it just prevented my healing.
Yeah. The violation is one thing, right? I mean, you're violated, and to totally forgive them and set them free feels like another violation.
It does.
There's been no justice here. And so until you understand, and that's the part of Isaiah 61 that we talked about earlier in the show, and I'm gonna requote the Jesus is saying that the sovereign Lord is on me because the Lord has anointed me to preach good news to the poor. He sent me to bind up the brokenhearted, to proclaim freedom to the captives and release from darkness for the prisoners, or those who are in darkness, to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor. That's you. You're his favorite. If Robbie were here, he would say that. Sam, you're his favorite. Yeah. The year of the Lord's favor and the day of vengeance of our God, to comfort all who mourn. There is a vengeance of our God. And for whatever reason, that is comforting to us. And Jesus knows it. He's the one that said this. And so when we hang on to it because the enemy says, no, Sam, don't let that go. They violated you, Sam. You can't forgive them. You can't let them off the hook because that's another violation. No, I'm not letting them off the hook. I don't have them on the hook. Someone else does. God does. And there will be a day of vengeance for those who mourn. And so there's a time to mourn that pain, that violation, that assault, and to grieve it and to let go of it and trust that either God will deal with it or that person will have received forgiveness from God. And in either case, I'm okay with it.
Mm-hmm. And I think, for me, it really became, once you give in and you submit and you forgive whatever that was, yes, you get the healing, but you don't really, I used to be so arrogant, and I still am in ways, but it was like, okay, God, you can forgive them. That's kind of your job. You're God, right? If they ask, they mean it. You're supposed to forgive them. I don't have to, right? And I carried that attitude with me. But when I let it go, it's like, God, I don't care if you forgive them. I hope you forgive them, and I hope that they walk with you. I'm just glad I don't have to deal with them anymore. Mm-hmm. I'm glad that you don't have them as part of my life.
Another component of that will prevent a lot of people from forgiving is saying, I'm telling them it's okay that they did that. That's not the case.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
And
good point, Jim.
You need to get that out of your mind. And that's an attack from the enemy because you're not saying that. Forgiveness has nothing to do with, saying it was okay. God does not say, well, all that we've done wrong is okay, but he forgives us and he made the sacrifice for it. And that you end up, and I'll probably misquote it, but I love the saying, that not forgiving someone is like drinking poison and expecting them to die. Some people could care less whether you forgive them or not, but it's your heart that takes the damage for holding on to that.
Yeah, and I think probably the hardest person to ever forgive is to forgive yourself. Mm-hmm. That's the stronghold. When you know that
because
you're guilty,
I'm the biggest idiot.
Well, yeah, when you know you're guilty of something or you believe you're guilty, whether you are or you're not, the enemy really, really loves it to hold on to that stronghold. Mm-hmm. And releasing your own personal forgiveness.
And that has to be probably one of the most common agreements out there, right? How many times, everybody, do you go out and say, "Yeah, I'm just an idiot. I'm stupid. I deserve that." And that's just the enemy working on you. And boy, has he had a lot of time to work on you over the years with a lot of things, right? Mm-hmm. So now that you're with Jesus, it's like, okay, yeah, just like you said, God, Jesus, that's your job. You are perfect. I'm not. I'm just this horrible thing. We were talking earlier about when we go to get healing, you have to be there to receive and accept and walk in that, or you're going to go right back, sliding back into some old habits, and it's so hard to shake an old habit. I mean, we talk, you read all the books on habit, breaking a habit and all that kind of stuff. It takes a long time. There's those layers. There's that onion again. There's just so much there. And it's just been so wonderful for me to be in this message and actually be conscious of what's going on, then actually being very specific about what it is I want to go do about that, rather than just, oh yeah, well, it's just kind of blowing it off and accepting it, and that's all you can do about it. No, you can be very, very intentional about what you're going to do next and what you're going to follow up on and what you're going to actually learn about yourself, and have that conversation with God about who I am, where I am, and why am I here, and where you want to go. Have those conversations. Ask him. He's wanting that with you. So go enter in.
It comes down to, on this healing and holding on to it, is who do you choose to believe? Do I choose to believe God?
Yep.
Right? Or do I choose to listen to the old self,
right,
that tries to tell me all these things that have some shred of truth about it? Do I listen to the world? Do I listen to other people? Do I listen to the enemy? Or do I listen to the one that created me and knows me better than I'll ever know myself, and hold on to that truth? And it is hard, but especially as you're being assaulted. But we have an active role in our healing, and that's allowing God to do it and then holding on to it once he has.
Right.
And next week we're going to talk about restoration.
Restoration, yeah.
Right. And so we'll move past the clip where he didn't have restoration and hopefully move into stories of our own restoration.
That's right.
And how God's come after our heart. Go to masculinejourney.org to register for the boot camp, or to get other podcasts, or to leave us a message. We'll see you next week.